Talking about the controversy, if we can, first of all, then from that match between Svitolina and Azarenka, there were boos, and it kind of feels as though it's come down to people not really being aware of the situation or just being a bit naive and not thinking of the situation.
Yeah, that's how I read the situation. I was commentating on the match last night, and it was an amazing match, and it was played in great spirit. Obviously, we know the two players in question, the countries that they're from. But in tennis, it's been player X against player Y, not their nationalities. I mean, you don't even mention where Daniil Medvedev's from, or Andrei Rublev from, or Elina Svitolina, where they're from. And I think it was just a case where the players, Natalie, were put in a very uncomfortable situation because most of the crowd just didn't know. And I mean, obviously, I am the first to criticise any player if they refuse to shake hands with the opponent or they refuse to shake hands with the umpire, because I feel the respect should be there. But we know that's not going to happen right now with what's going on with the war. So I felt really sorry for Azarenka because she was absolutely gutted. She lost. She played her heart out. And then, of course, she gets booed off when she's given her all for nearly 3 hours.
And what we should say is it's not like Azarenka didn't acknowledge Svitolina, because you see her shake the umpire's hand and turn to Svitolina and sort of nod in acceptance that you've obviously beaten me, but these things weren't really seen.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Natalie. But you got to think we get the picture, the camera behind the court.
Yeah,
you are the spectators and you're at the side. You're probably not seeing that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
So I think it's all a bit clunky, to be honest. And I think what it's shown and happened at the French Open, I think the umpire or the authorities, which is what Svitolina said, I thought she spoke very well after the match in a press conference. I think the authorities or the umpire needs to make it clear, either before the match or, Wimbledon, stroke the ITF, stroke WTA, ATP. I think they make an announcement so everyone is clear. Because, I mean, a lot of spectators sometimes don't know the rules. I mean, last year I sat on the court, totally separate issue, but I sat on the court for Nadal and Fritz. And when Nadal got to 7 points in the final set tiebreak, everyone started cheering because they weren't aware that the rules had actually changed. And in the final set tiebreak, it's now first to 10 points.
What about the actual tournament itself, the women's side of it? Who's shaping up well and how are they looking? How are the favourites looking?
It's very exciting, Dino, and it was very bottom half heavy in the women's. You had Swiatek in the top, who I thought was the overwhelming favourite. I mean, she saved a couple of match points yesterday, and actually I think that will do her good because there was the real possibility that, in my thoughts anyway, at the start of the tournament, she could make the final without dropping a set, but she's had the scare, and that I feel tends to benefit you. Sabalenka also had a scare a couple of rounds ago, but in the bottom half, it is Sabalenka, it's Rybakina, it's Jabeur, and it's Kvitova. So choose between those four. It's going to be difficult. Personally, my pick at the start was a Sabalenka Swiatek final, but the way Rybakina played last year, and she knows she can beat Sabalenka. I think what we've got now in the women's game with the three that I mentioned, Swiatek, Sabalenka, and Rybakina, we've got rivalries. And that hasn't necessarily been the case in the last few years in the women's game, where, of course, we've have had that in the men's with Federer, Nadal, Djokovic and Murray.
Just very quickly, before we ask about the British interest, which, of course, sadly has already ended, Mira Andreeva is a fascinating story, isn't she? Just 16 years old, making her debut at Wimbledon, only started playing on grass, in the last month or so?
She is a phenomenal talent. At 16 years of age, she qualified at the French. She made the third round. I watched her at the qualifying here at Wimbledon. And when you see someone who's young and has time on the ball, but crucially, she has the poise. She just never seems to be flustered, where sometimes you watch a player and they feel the anxiety is there. It's clear in their body language. But she's as calm on the court as she's as calm off the court. She's a real star. I was going to say a real star for the future. She might be a real star for the present. Who knows what Andreeva could achieve? We shouldn't forget Sharapova won Wimbledon at 17. We thought that might never be beaten. But I think realistically for Andreeva, really, really bright future.